The living room was filled with laughter, torn wrapping paper, and the clinking of wine glasses. Cousins passed around monogrammed jackets, aunties gushed over curated skincare sets, and my brother was already firing up the drone he'd just unwrapped. I looked around the room, scanning for a gift with my name on it. Nothing under the tree. Nothing on the table. Nothing at all. Then my mother, champagne in one hand, eyes glazed over, turned toward me with a chuckle. "Oh, sweetie," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "We forgot you existed." The whole room roared with laughter. I didn't. I just smiled. The kind of smile you learn after years of being the ghost in your own family. The smile that hides every scar, emotional, financial, invisible. The smile that says, "Okay." I stood up slowly, still smiling, and reached into my purse. I pulled out a manila envelope, tapped it once against my palm, then looked my family dead in the eyes. "No worries," I said calmly. "I bought the house this morning. You all have 30 days to leave." It took a second. The room, once buzzing with cheer, went dead silent. A fork clattered to the ground. My aunt froze mid-sip. My cousin blinked, confused. Then came the denial. "What are you talking about?" my brother asked, standing. "You're joking," someone else said. My mom stared at me like I'd just grown a second head. "What do you mean, you bought the house?" I opened the envelope and slid out a thick packet of papers, flipping to the front. Deed transfer. County Records Office. As of 9:15 this morning, this house is in my name. "Why would you do this?" My mom spat, the laughter now a distant memory. "Oh," I said, voice still sweet. "I figured since you forgot I existed, you wouldn't mind." No one moved. No one spoke. Not until my uncle finally whispered, "She's serious." I walked toward the mantel, placed the deed on it, then turned toward the camera in my mind. My name is Natalie Cole. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because being invisible was never the curse, it was the weapon they handed me. You see, when no one notices you, they don't notice what you're capable of. They don't watch what you're building. They don't know when you're about to strike. I was always the afterthought. Until I owned the roof over their heads. I was the afterthought. The oops baby. The kid they didn't plan for and never really figured out what to do with once I showed up. My two older siblings had already drained what little emotional bandwidth my parents had. Mom doted on my brother like he was royalty. My sister? A fragile little glass figurine they all protected like a museum piece. Me? I came last and got leftovers, if that. There are no baby pictures of me in the hallway. No memory boxes tucked away in the attic. My birthday was usually a whoops, we forgot kind of day, followed by a sad grocery store cake and a $5 bill stuffed into a crumpled card someone clearly bought on the way home. I stopped expecting gifts by the time I was 10. By 15, I stopped expecting applause. I was getting straight A's, winning awards, getting into honors programs, and it barely registered. Meanwhile, if my sister passed algebra, they threw her a party. I raised myself, taught myself how to cook when I realized no one would bother, learned how to drive from YouTube, filled out my own college applications while my parents argued about vacation plans for my brother. I worked 2 jobs in college, waitressing by night, tutoring by day, and still managed to graduate early. My family didn't come to graduation. They said the flights were too expensive, but I'd paid for my own tuition. Every single cent. But here's the thing, I never complained. I just adapted. I became quiet, efficient, unshakable. I figured if I couldn't be their favorite, I'd be their fallback. The reliable one. The one they called when the rent was short, the car broke down, or the power got cut off. And I always showed up. Always paid. Always helped. Not because I thought they'd love me more, but because I wanted to believe they might eventually see me. That if I kept proving myself useful, they'd eventually realize I mattered. Spoiler alert, they never did. Even after I got promoted, after I bought my first property, after I built a quiet little empire out of almost nothing, I was still just Natalie, the quiet one. The one they called when the Wi-Fi stopped working. The one who never got a thank you. The one they forgot at Christmas. The one they laughed at during reunions. I used to cry about it. Then I just stopped feeling anything at all. The truth is, I wasn't born into this family. I was tolerated by it. They didn't raise a daughter. They left a survivor. The requests always came with sugar on top. Hey, Nat, you're so good with numbers. Can you look at this loan thing for me? Sweetheart, you're the techie one. Can you fix my Wi-Fi again? You're still driving that SUV, right? Mind helping us move next weekend? It was never really asking. Just assuming. Just taking. I used to say yes. Every time. Like clockwork. Not because I wanted to, but because I was afraid of what would happen if I stopped. Afraid they'd cut me off, even if I was barely hanging onto the edge of their lives as it was. But eventually something shifted. It started at a birthday dinner, not mine, of course. It was my sister's. They rented out a little bistro, ordered wine like water, gifted her a custom necklace. I handed her a modest gift card, and she barely glanced at it. Didn't even say thanks. Later that night, I went to the restroom and overheard my brother laughing to someone I didn't recognize, some cousin or new friend. She's the weakest link, he said. Honestly, who cares if she shows up? She just sits there like a houseplant. The woman laughed. Is she always that awkward? Yeah, he said. But hey, she's good for a free meal and a ride, so. I didn't go back to the table. I just left. No one noticed. 2 weeks later, I saw a video from my cousin's wedding, the one I wasn't invited to. My mom was in the background, talking to some woman I didn't know. Her voice was unmistakable. She's just socially invisible, my mom said. Always has been. Like she's there, but never part of things. You know. They were talking about me. Laughing. I stared at the screen until the light of it felt like heat on my skin. Something in me cracked open. Not in anger, but in clarity. That night, I started researching local property sales. Pulled up real estate transfer laws. Dug through mortgage listings. I had money saved. I had good credit. I had the skills. I was done playing the wallpaper in their lives. They didn't even notice I stopped replying to texts. Stopped coming to events. Stopped sending birthday cards. No one checked in. No one asked if I was okay. They never noticed I stopped showing up until I showed up with power. The letter came in a plain white envelope addressed to current occupant. My parents didn't even open it. It sat on their cluttered dining table for a week until I picked it up, curiosity getting the better of me. Notice of delinquent property taxes. At first, I didn't believe it. The house was modest, but it had been in our family for decades. Surely, they were managing it? But 2 weeks later, I checked the county website. Status. In pre-foreclosure. Taxes unpaid for 3 years. Lien stacking up like unpaid parking tickets. That's when I knew the house, the family fortress, the backdrop to every humiliation I'd ever endured, was vulnerable. It could be mine. I didn't gloat. I didn't even smile. I just opened a new browser tab and began researching real estate attorneys. I found one discreet, efficient, and with no connection to my last name. Through her, I set up a limited liability company. Clean. Quiet. Invisible. The house went to auction in 6 weeks. I made my offer through the LLC. No red flags. No fanfare. Just a name on a paper they wouldn't recognize. It was accepted. The deed was transferred. The title cleared. The home? Legally mine. I didn't tell a soul. At the next family dinner, I brought wine. Complimented Mom's casserole. Laughed when my cousin made that tired joke about me being the quiet one. I smiled when my sister opened a new designer purse, a gift from my mother, just because. They were clueless. And I started keeping records. Screenshots of every time they forgot my birthday. Emails where they asked for small favors. Texts that went unanswered when I was sick. I started collecting everything they ever used to make me feel like an afterthought. Because this time I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to own what they stood on. They thought invisibility was weakness. They thought silence meant surrender. But they never learned that silence can be armor. That strategy lives in stillness. That power doesn't always arrive with a scream. Sometimes it arrives with a signature. The only thing louder than revenge is silence, wrapped in a deed. The wrapping paper crinkled, laughter bubbled, and the scent of cheap wine and cologne filled the living room. It was the annual Cole family reunion, more like a trophy parade for my siblings. Monica opened a Tiffany bracelet. Jared unwrapped a new smartwatch. Even the grandkids got custom jackets with their names embroidered on them. I sat quietly, a cup of lukewarm cider in my hands. There was no gift in front of me, not even a card. Mom looked up from her seat and laughed, really laughed. "Oh, sweetie," she said between chuckles, "we forgot you existed." The room roared. No one defended me. Not Monica, who once lived in my apartment rent-free for a year. Not Jared, whose credit card debt I'd quietly paid off after his third layoff. Not even Dad, who once cried in my arms after Mom told him he was a failure. I set my cup down, stood, smiled, then said clearly, "No worries. I bought the house this morning. You all have 30 days to leave." The laughter died mid-breath. Silence rippled through the room like a power outage. Dad scoffed. "This is a joke." I reached into my bag, pulled out the deed, and handed it to him. "It's not," I said, voice even. He blinked. "Read the document once." Then again. His hand trembled slightly. "What the hell is this?" Jared asked, snatching it from him. Monica stood up already defensive. "You can't do this. You wouldn't." "Oh, but I did," I said. "Months ago. You didn't notice. No one ever does." Mom's eyes welled up with angry tears. "Natalie, we're your family. You can't just kick us out." "You're right," I said gently. "You were my family, until you turned me into a ghost." Jared's face flushed. "We didn't ask for this. Why are you doing this now?" "You didn't ask," I nodded. "You just expected. Expected me to show up. Pay up. Shut up." Dad looked ready to explode. "You think owning a house makes you better than us?" "No," I said, calm and cool. "But it makes me done with being less." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply stepped forward and placed the deed on the mantel, right between Monica's cheerleading photo and Jared's college diploma. The same mantel that had never held a single photo of me. They shouted. They pled. They threw insults like hailstones. But I didn't flinch. I had been screamed at before. Forgotten. Used. But never again. This wasn't just revenge. It wasn't even about the house anymore. It was about the moment their eyes finally locked on me, not as the quiet, forgettable youngest sibling, but as the one who held the keys, the power, the deed. It was never about the house. It was about finally being seen as the threat I am. 3 days later, the envelopes arrived like clockwork, certified, notarized, and hand-delivered. One for Monica, one for Jared, one for my parents. Each one stamped with the same word in bold letters, "Notice to vacate." The reactions were predictable. Jared called first. I let it ring. Then came the text, "This is insane. You can't legally do this." I responded with a screenshot of the deed, my lawyer's information, and a brief message. "Talk to someone who understands real estate law before you embarrass yourself further." 3 hours later, his lawyer confirmed exactly what I already knew. He didn't have a single leg to stand on. Next came Monica. She showed up at my apartment in tears. Full dramatic performance. "Nat, please," she whimpered. "This isn't you. You're not this cold." I let her speak. I even made tea. Then I asked her calmly, "What was I to you, Monica? When you lived on my couch for 9 months rent-free and I paid for your therapy bills, who was I?" She blinked, silent. "When you told Mom I was always doing the most for attention, the day after I got promoted, who was I to you then?" No answer. "I'm still that person," I said, handing her the tea. "Just with better boundaries now." Monica left without finishing her cup. My mother called that night, and the voicemail was unhinged. For minutes of ranting, weeping, accusing me of destroying the family. That I was the root of the dysfunction. That I was ungrateful for everything they did. Everything they did. They left me to raise myself. They raised Monica and Jared like royalty, and I was the janitor cleaning up the mess when the crown slipped. And Dad? I never heard from him directly. But 2 days later, Jared told me he found him passed out drunk on the porch, with the eviction letter crumpled in his fist. They tried to save face. Monica told mutual cousins I was mentally unstable. Jared claimed I manipulated the system. Mom sent a mass email to extended family, framing herself as the victim. But here's the thing, no one believed them. Everyone had seen the way they treated me. The passive-aggressive digs. The absence of my name in their stories. The way I was never thanked, never praised, never seen. No one came to their defense. I wasn't the villain. I was the product of their neglect, standing on the legal ground they never thought I'd reach. For the first time in my life, they couldn't talk their way out of it. There was no spin, no savior, no loophole. They laughed when they forgot me. But the system didn't forget my signature. Natalie Cole didn't disappear. She just relocated to a place where her name wasn't followed by a pause or a polite squint of confusion. The town she chose wasn't glamorous. No high-rises. No gossip circles or family friends asking, "How's your mom doing?" It was quiet, honest. A place where she could walk into the local coffee shop and the barista would remember her order, not because she bought the most expensive drink, but because she smiled when she said thank you. She bought a small craftsman-style home on the edge of town, painted the shutters blue, grew herbs in the kitchen window. For the first time in her adult life, she had silence, and not the punishing kind. The kind that heals. In that silence, she did something she hadn't dared do before. She stopped surviving and started living. She launched a local support group out of the community center. Just 5 women at first. Each one with a story eerily close to hers. Not physical abuse, no bruises to show, but the invisible kind. The kind that lingers in your tone when you say your own name out loud. The kind that makes you over-explain your worth to people who stopped listening years ago. The group didn't have a name. They didn't need one. They showed up week after week because someone finally saw them. Natalie never led from the front. She shared tea, she listened, and when someone needed guidance, she offered it softly. Never like a lecture, always like a friend. One day, a girl named Mara joined. Barely 21. Smart, guarded. Looked like she'd already had a lifetime of being overlooked. Natalie saw her younger self in Mara's cautious smile. She took her under her wing, not with grand gestures, just consistency. Helped her apply for scholarships. Proofread her essays. Celebrated every win with a slice of pie from the bakery down the road. Mara was the first person in her family to go to college. And when she walked across that stage, Natalie was there, front row, hands clasped, beaming like a mother. It was the kind of pride no one had ever shown her. But now she could give it freely, without bitterness. Love, too, came quietly. A kind man named Caleb, who ran the used bookstore 2 blocks from her house. He never asked about her past. Never pushed. He just met her where she was, sawdust on her jeans, coffee in her hand, and that tired strength in her eyes. With him, there were no tests to pass. No bar to meet. Just shared space, shared books, and laughter that didn't come at someone's expense. One evening, as they sat on her porch watching the sky dim to lavender, Caleb asked, "Do you ever think about going back?" She thought for a long moment before answering. Not anymore. And it was true. For so long, she had waited for recognition, for apology, for someone in that house to say, "We see you now." But waiting had been a form of captivity. "I thought I wanted them to say sorry," she said finally. "I just needed to stop waiting." 1 year later, the house was gone. Not physically. It still stood, its white paint flaking under a gray sky, porch sagging like a tired mouth. But it no longer belonged to them. The deed had transferred. New names on the mailbox. New cars in the driveway. New laughter echoing down the halls that once swallowed hers whole. Natalie didn't drive by often. Once or twice, maybe. Curiosity, not sentiment. She didn't feel anything for the place anymore, just a quiet kind of distance. Like looking at an old bruise that had finally healed. You remember the pain, but it doesn't belong to you now. Then, in early spring, she got a text from a cousin she hadn't heard from in years. Thought you'd want this LOL. Attached was a photo, blurry, yellowed at the edges. A family reunion from a decade ago. Everyone crowded together in the backyard of that house, holding paper plates, sun in their eyes. Natalie looked at every face. Her siblings. Her parents. The cousin who sent it. Uncles. Aunts. Even kids who weren't born yet at the time had made it in. But not her. She wasn't in the photo. Not at the edge. Not cropped out. Just never there. At first she laughed. That bitter, knowing kind of laugh. Because that photo wasn't an accident. It was the perfect portrait of how she'd always existed in their world. Not at all. No one had asked where she was that day. No one had noticed she wasn't in the shot. Even now, her cousin hadn't mentioned it, hadn't said, "I just realized you're not in it. Just thought you'd want this."
She didn't reply.
Later that night, she walked through her garden barefoot. The spring soil was soft, still holding winter's chill, and her herbs were sprouting again, sage, rosemary, lavender. The wind brushed past like a whisper. Not the kind that warns, the kind that welcomes. She stood there for a long time, staring up at the stars. That house had once felt like the whole world, like the only place she'd ever be accepted, if she just tried hard enough, if she gave enough, if she smiled through enough jokes at her expense. Now it was just a footnote. Her new home didn't have ghosts in the walls. It didn't need her to shrink to fit inside. It didn't remember a version of her that never existed. Here she was whole. She had people now, ones she'd chosen. Friends who didn't keep score. A partner who didn't question her silence. A life stitched together by intention, not obligation. And most of all, she had herself. She looked up at the moon and let the air fill her lungs, deep and clean. They'd forgotten she existed. And once, that had gutted her.
But now?
Now she knew who she was. Knew her own voice. Her worth. Her capacity to walk away without needing to explain. They forgot I existed. But I didn't. And I'll never let anyone forget me again.